Little observation from the Haftarah to start out our look at Shabbat Parah. It is, where is it now? Verse 25 on page 1288. It's talking about purifying the people, Mikol Tmuotechem Umikol Gilulechem. And it translates that on 25, I will purify you from all your impurities and all your fetishes. I'm not sure. I understand why they translate it that way, but I'm not sure I would have translated it that way. Glulo, gilulechem, gilulechem. Jeff used that word a couple of times today in this service, a derivation of that word. The golel or golelet is the one who rolls the Torah. A Gilgul, what is a Gilgul? Anybody into their like weird, mythology kind of stuff? Evil spirits and stuff, that's right. Megalgel is to roll something. Galgalats. What's that? Tire. Yes, Galel is a tire. Also, Galgalats, Ga'ale Sahal is Ga'ale radio. Ga'ale Tzahal, Army Radio, Galgalatz, the name of the radio station in Israel. That word seems to be a word that plays in the idea of cycles and waves, something that turns and returns, that washes over you. Perhaps it is actually meant to be spatial in the sense of rolling the Torah, but perhaps it's also meant to be cyclical in a Lador Vador sort of sense. So now I will purify you, Mikol Gilulechem, from all of your indiscretion. It's a hard one to answer because, again, I want to say waves. Hear you from the rollings, the things that wash over you. All right, so now let's think about Shabbat Parah. And we're going to come back to this in a second. What is the difference between the golden calf and the Parah Adumah? One's gold, thank you. Whoever said that, was that you, Howard? Thank you. One's gold, yes. The other one is red, maybe brown. We're going to come back to that too. Red, maybe, with a big asterisk next to the red. Thank you. What other differences are there?
Live and dead.
Live and dead, thank you. One's an idol. The idol one I want to seize on for a second. Ibn Ezra, from about the 1400s, makes a really interesting point about the golden calf, the Egel HaZahav. Ibn Ezra says, the Israelites who were involved in manufacturing this golden calf, this idol, they were also the ones who came out of Egypt, who would have remembered that, who would have remembered that mighty hand and the outstretched arm and the splitting of the sea and all that stuff. Were they so stupid as to think that they could just go and manufacture the power that had delivered them from Egypt? Ibn Ezra says no. Ibn Ezra disagrees with you, Judah. Judah, you are welcome to say no, that yes, they could have been that stupid. Ibn Ezra says no, they weren't that stupid. Ibn Ezra sees it differently. Ibn Ezra makes the argument that they're not replacing the power that brought them up out of Egypt with the mighty hand and the outstretched arm. They're not replacing God. It's not a true idol in that way. Ibn Ezra makes the suggestion from the 1400s again that actually what they're replacing is Moses. They're not replacing God, they're replacing the conduit to God. They're replacing the way that they have a relationship with God. God's self, is still the same God that brought them up out of Egypt. They're not so dumb as to think they can build that out of a furnace, says Ibn Ezra. But that Moses has been gone too long, and they need a new way of being in touch with God. And so the golden calf there is not, it's the temptation is to call it an idol, a replacement for God. Ibn Ezra makes the argument it's not actually an idol. It's supposed to be some kind of a conduit, a bridge to God rather than God's self. Now this takes us to the para aduma. The red heifer, calf, whatever, cow, gets evoked in all of these places as this means of purification. Okay? You're supposed to slaughter the thing, take some of the blood and sprinkle it in the ashes, and there's this whole ritual that we see here. All right? And we see it evoked again in Yechezkel in that reading, all about purification. And the rabbinic imagination wants to tell you that the reason it comes up right now is because it's part of this ascent trajectory toward Pesach, that it's actually part of the journey of purifying ourselves and our souls in the journey to Pesach. Cool. Who can tell me about the para aduma in today's world? What do you know about the para aduma today?
Hard to find.
Hard to find. Thank you, Michael, which goes back to Martin's point. Check out page 881 here. Hebrew, the brown red cow. How now, red cow? Hebrew, adom, which here probably means brown, for which there is no word in the Bible. They don't have chum, which modern Hebrew has for brown. So who knows what color it was? But what do you know about the cow today? They're hard to find. What else do you know about them?
If you're not you're pure, you touch it, you're impure. And if you're impure, you touch it, you're pure.
True, I'm talking about it in today's world specifically.
Do you mean
I'm talking about the idea of the para aduma today.
An idea of purification,
Okay.
you have in mind.
What do you have in mind? Great question. What do you have in mind? Because there are people actually out there today who are in the process of trying to create a para aduma, to breed one of these, to which one might actually ask Martin's question in point of fact, what do you have in mind? Thank you. The Third Temple. Some of these groups were also involved in terrorist plots in the 1980s, actually, to blow up the Dome of the Rock in order to bring about the space to build a third temple. The para aduma today is fascinating because the people who are interacting with it as a living, breathing animal trying to resurrect it are also interested in some cataclysmic violence. And so we go from a place where the para aduma was the means of a certain kind of purification and being clean and being pure and being ready to a place where, let me put it like this, the people who are breeding them today are probably not fellow travelers of mine in any intellectual, ideological, or spiritual path. And that takes me back to where we started. Mikol Gilulechem. I want to purify you of your Gilulechem. Uses the word fetishes. Fine, this thing maybe that you focus on, that you get into. But I actually think that wave-like part of it, the cyclical part of it, is instructive here. If you solely and purely try and put yourself in the place of the ancestors and relive their lives and redo their own actions, marching around like some kind of contemporary Isaac redigging Abraham's wells, you've lost the plot, so to speak. It's fascinating to me that with Shabbat Par'ah, we have these two images of this sort of idolatry, which actually maybe wasn't full on idolatry and maybe actually was like, we can understand where the Israelites were coming from. Moshe was gone for a really long time, and so they made this golden calf because they just wanted to reach back out to God. The road to hell is paved in good intentions. And then we have the Shabbat, the para aduma, that back in the ancient world was this means of purification, of making ourselves fit and ready and pure to enter into a spiritually elevated place of Pesach. And yet there are people in the world who have taken this in a somewhat more violent and destructive, and dare I say profane direction through a very, very literalistic fundamentalist reading of what this thing is for.
In a way, couldn't we all, in a way, be a people that everything that they saw, even though continuously you would have thought, and we can all be like this, could we not? And then when Moses was finally coming down after all those 40 days, I think it was 40 days, and when he finally came down, he broke those first tablets. I'm just only asking the question, I'm trying to imply, but asking the question, could we all be capable of that? How many times does God have to demonstrate to us, and even in the smallest of ways, and we can still.
Could we all be
That's
capable
what
of
I
that?
meant by, we can be that stubborn, that stupid, the
Sure.
that. That's what I'm not singling out anyone. We all can be capable of doing that and miss the small things sometimes. It's not always in the big.
And let me go with Ibn Ezra here, that I actually don't think it is that stupid. That I actually think it's pretty human and pretty believable and pretty understandable from that place. That it's seductive in its own way. That Ibn Ezra wants to say the people aren't dumb. They actually did what they thought was right. So this is why I actually love this piece of Shabbat Parah, lining up the golden calf with the Parah Adumah. You could get to, sorry, go ahead. Before I wrap up, go ahead.
It seems that these people who are trying to read the Parah Adumah are actually doing it on the basis of translating the word following Parah Adumah in the text, Tamima, as meaning that the cow had, or the heifer had no white hairs or black hairs or anything that wasn't brown or red, whatever that means. But I don't understand really the use of the word tamima. It's possible, it seems to me, that it just refers to the thing being a heifer, but I don't know.
So
is parah really just a cow? Is parah without any modifier be a heifer?
yeah, tamimah I would translate as unblemished, and it's interesting to me here that in that haftarah for it, it talks about, where is it? I'm looking for it now. No, maybe it's in the Chukat. When a person dying. Yeah, here it is. All right, right up at the top of Chukat on 881. Red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has been laid. You haven't already used it for some kind of servitude. You haven't deployed it for a different purpose. And so the not only is it sort of physically unblemished, but it is also unblemished in sense of purpose, so to speak. It is kadosh in the sense of separate and specific for this thing. Okay? That's the way I would translate tamimah, I think, in this place. In the same way that, like, you're not supposed to read by Shabbat candles or by Hanukkah candles because they have a purpose, and that's not utilitarian. Kind of like the cow. The cow is supposed to have a purpose that's not for dragging around heavy things and tearing up your ground and plowing. It's supposed to have that as a purpose. It's designated in that way. But I want to come back around for to bring us to something of a landing place. With the Passover story, it's such a fun one, and it's so easy to do with kids and to make for your kiddie satyrs and do your 10 plagues, and then God is so great, and God saves the people, and the bad guys drown and get schmeiced in the water, all of this stuff. And I think sometimes a childlike reading of it is actually, I don't know, intuitive, accessible, tempting, maybe even seductive. But I like lining up the para aduma and its salvific purifying power with the egel hazahav because they feel like correctives to one another. In terms of right when you think the thing is simple, it's not. As Ibn Ezra will tell you, right when you think the Egel HaZahav is simple, that, oh, they're just making a new god, he says, no, it's more complicated than that. The Para Aduma is actually more complicated than that too. Our liberation and the destruction of our enemies, also a complex thing. It's part of the whole pouring out of the wine, one drop at a time, for each one of those plagues is to diminish our joy at the losses, the sorrow, the suffering of the enemy. That's weird. Aren't we? Isn't this all like mighty hand, outstretched arm, salvific stuff? Shabbat Para, I think, actually speaks to and drashes a world that's more complicated than that. And that even in the run up to Pesach, with all the kitty satyrs and the bouncing frogs and the costumes and the frog song and all of that stuff, we as adults in the room ought not forget just how complex the world is, even in what feels like the moment of Zman Cherutenu, the time of the great delivery, and everything's perfect and wonderful, and we get saved by God. It's still complicated. We live in a complex world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.